Okay, hey guys. Well, welcome to our lecture tonight. So this is the second lecture of the last week of the 15-week program. Today we're going over psychology, sociology, practice passages, and I'm Jenelle. I'm one of the MCAT tutors here, and we're going to get started. So this is just a reminder for those who have been with us before, but all of these videos will be uploaded onto YouTube after they're complete. And so this is just a reminder to modify your names to what you would be comfortable with, as well as changing your profile picture, anything like that. Just because, this will be published on our YouTube channel afterwards. So. And like I mentioned, this is our last week of the 15-week full course. We have one more lecture tomorrow night at 8:30 p.m. EST, and then we also have our last office hour session on Sunday at 8:30 p.m. EST. So here I have our GroupMe link, and this is a great way to contact all the MCAT tutors, but also a great way to hear about, what are the next activities after this 15-week program ends. So definitely we'll keep you guys posted on GroupMe as to, what we do next. So feel free to join that if you're not already. And then we also have our YouTube channel where all of these lectures will be uploaded onto. You can see all of the past lectures from the 15-week program on there if you're interested in, watching any of the other topics that we've gone over so far. Okay, so today our learning objectives are pretty simple. We are just going to practice and review 3 psychology, sociology passages. And so I'm just going to start off with just some tips. And my tips for this section would mainly be first to gather information while you're reading the passages. So, integrate familiar terms with understanding the passage and being able to recognize these familiar terms while you're reading it. So especially with psychology and sociology, you should definitely be familiar with the content. And when I say the content, those specific psychology, sociology terms, because they use that throughout the passages. And so sometimes if you don't understand a certain concept, it makes it hard with understanding the passage itself and understanding, what is going on. But also, even the answer choices tend to be these different terms. And so really knowing these terms in and out will help you a lot tremendously on this section. And so for me, I felt like a really great resource that's completely free is the 300-page Khan Academy PDF from MCAT Reddit. I can post that in the chat right now if anyone is interested in checking it out. But it's just, there's a 300-page document. There's also a shorter version. That is 100 pages. And it just goes over the majority of the psychology, if not all of the psychology, sociology terms that you would have to know for the exam itself. And I personally use the 300-page Khan Academy one, so I thought it was great. And the other aspect, besides just gathering familiar terms and understanding them from the passage, the ones that completely are text-based, is also if there is a figure in psychology, sociology passages. So for this section, I would say a majority of the passages will be pretty text-based, but there are a few ones that might include a table or a graph. So in those cases, I feel like it's very important to identify the independent and dependent variable, especially if there is a graph, so what is changing and what is affecting the other variable that they're testing. And then also what helps me when I'm going through the passages and reading, so after you read the text, they kind of refer to another figure, and then I'll take a brief look at the figure and try to explain, briefly what I see from it, just so I understand what's going on, and then go read the rest of like what the passage is telling me from there. And before we get into the passages, I also wanted to mention that I think one of the biggest challenges about the psychology, sociology section in particular is that it's the last section when you're taking the MCAT. And so the order for the sections when you're taking the MCAT, it starts off with chemistry and physics, and then it goes to CARS, and then it goes to biochem, and then finally it goes to psychology, sociology. So really, I think the biggest thing is to be able to maintain your endurance throughout all of those, previous sections, to still be completely able, like 100% remembering all of these terms for this last section. So I think, definitely this will come with doing a lot more practice problems and practice full lengths, but I think, endurance is really one of the biggest factors for this section. So besides that, I feel like, at least personally for me, I thought the psychology and sociology section was pretty intuitive. So I think for most, it's not super difficult in terms of content, but more for just how it is placed in the exam. And so I have a question here of how should we build endurance? That is a good question because I'm mentioning it. I would say just doing as many, practice questions as you can, and really doing as many full lengths as you can, at least depending on when you're about to take your exam. So I would say, the AMC bundle that you would buy has like one sample exam, and then it also has 4 full-length exams. So I would say the minimum like full lengths that you guys should do before you actually take your exam are those 5. If you can do even more, that would be better, but just, continuing to practice, like doing all of these practice questions under like time constraints, like David is saying here, and like putting time constraints on yourself. Like, let's say if you're doing, passage or like just separate sections on your own without kind of like doing the full lengths, just being, when you do a bunch of these practice passages and practice questions, you will get used to it, but just maintaining that throughout your studying so that you don't quite like take a long break and then you have to get back into being able to do that 7-hour long exam. So in the beginning, doing a little bit, and continuing to build that up as you get closer to your exam. So hopefully that helps. So now we're going to go into the first passage. So this is practice passage 1. Okay, we're going to go over this passage really quickly. I'm just going to read it with you guys. So passage 1. Traditionally, individuals with middle to high socioeconomic status have lived in suburban areas, which tend to have well-funded schooling systems and reduced crime. In recent years, however, major urban areas have seen an increase in the movement of individuals with middle to high SES move back to newly renovated city center neighborhoods. As a result, individuals with low SES who previously lived in those neighborhoods have been displaced. In a new study, researchers aimed to track house prices in a city center area of Houston, Texas over a period of 20 years. The results from the study are shown in Figure 1. As we can see here, then the increase in housing costs has forced low SES individuals to seek housing in more industrial areas of town. As a result, these individuals face increased exposure to polluted air and water, thereby increasing the incidence and prevalence of certain health conditions, such as asthma or cancer. In addition, many of these low SES individuals experience an exacerbation of their environment-related health conditions due to lack of healthcare access. And so, first question I have for you guys, what does the first paragraph tell us? So that first paragraph definitely indicates the, high SES coming in now to the city center. And then these, low SESs are being unfortunately displaced because of that. And so the second question was, what was learned based on the graph?
If I recall, the graph had a trending as the years increased from 2000, whatever, there was an increase, I guess, in people being displaced. I don't know what the y-axis was. I don't have the graph in front of me. Let me see if I could pull it back up.
Here,
Yes, price per, oh, okay, so it's price. Okay, so since 2000, there has been an increase, I imagine, in the price of these previously low income neighborhood. They've become a lot more pricier, kind of maybe some regentrification. And then towards maybe like 2008, maybe like right there when the crash, when 2008, when we went through that crash, there was a dip in the housing price. Then it went back up exponentially after 2010. The price for these, what you call it, the neighborhoods that are being moved back into.
Yeah, exactly. And actually, although just to simplify it, so just I guess as the years have been increasing, the price per square foot has also been increasing. Then the last question I had is, what is an outcome of low SES individuals moving to more industrialized areas?
There's been health concerns, health hazard, increase in cancer, increase in asthma, pollution, and I think that's basically what I got.
Exactly. Perfect. Okay, so without further ado, we're going to go into our first question. I'll give you guys 2 minutes. So we have 100% saying choice B. And I'm very proud of you guys. The answer is choice B. So I guess just to briefly go over this one then, the process described in paragraph 1 is best known as. And we know that in paragraph 1, there were the high socioeconomic status SAS individuals that were coming into now the urban areas from leaving their suburban areas. And this ends up causing the low SES individuals to end up being, moved displaced out of their previous homes in those urban areas. And that process of, renovating the city center so they become nicer and having that influx of high SES individuals coming in is gentrification, as a definition of this term is for Psych. In terms of the other options, so renovation, I guess would be more like just improving like an area. So it maybe improving or changing something for like an example, a building or things like that. But the problem, I guess, the reason why A would be incorrect is because it's not quite addressing that movement of high SES individuals into the city centers and low SES individuals out of those city centers. And like sometimes psychology, sociology will have terms that aren't quite the concepts that or terms that they use. So like with C, rejuvenation, that's not quite related to this particular process. And then D, intragenerational mobility, that's a common psychology, sociology term. However, that one's more about like the changes of individuals' statuses throughout so within the same generation. But that doesn't relate to the SES status or the movement of high SES individuals in and low SES individuals out. So that's why D is incorrect as well. But we're going to go into the next question right now. I'm going to give you guys a minute. So I see here 100% say that the answer is C. So this one is a little bit tricky. The answer is actually B. So the question says the exacerbation of health conditions due to a lack of access of healthcare is known as. And so the answer is B because second sickness is, at least in psychology, sociology terms, it's defined as, this worsening of health conditions because of SES status. And so because of this exacerbation of health conditions that, was described in that last paragraph of the passage, those low SES individuals end up being moved to this other area, which has all of these, just the environment is really not that great for them. And all of these like increase in health conditions is because of that. It originates from that low SES status, which first caused them to, I guess, it really affects where they end up living. And it also tends to be that low SES individuals live in areas where the conditions are not that great. So that's why B is the correct answer. For C, environmental justice, I can definitely understand why you guys would pick that one because it mentions the environmental aspect. However, environmental justice is a little bit different in terms of its definition based on the psychology, sociology terms. And so what environmental justice is the right that every individual living anywhere should be able to, have proper access to healthcare and be able to have, be able to take care and maintain their health. And so it's more like every area shouldn't have this kind of inequality of their health conditions because of where they're living. So that's why C is incorrect, because it's kind of like, because that's how the term is defined. And then for A, absolute poverty, that's in the event where individuals are extremely poor that they can't even buy like basic needs. Although, absolute poverty is associated with SES, it's not, the term itself is not related to the exacerbation of health conditions because of the lack of access to healthcare. So the way the term is defined is just in terms of not being able to, like, having such low income that you can't pay for basic needs. And then for D, medical mistrust, that one is not quite, so that's definitely a patient-doctor interaction, but that isn't a term that would describe the question prompt here. And so that's why B is the correct answer. So then we're going to go into the next question. I'm going to give you guys a minute. We have 100% saying A. And so I am proud of you guys because the answer is A. So the question asks, researchers conduct a new study within a US city and find that it is more difficult to find healthy and affordable food options in low SES neighborhoods versus high SES neighborhoods. Which of the following terms best characterizes this observation? And so the correct answer is A, because the definition of a food desert is like that inability to find healthy and affordable food options, which is usually associated with low SES neighborhoods. And so that's why the correct answer is A. For the other choices, B, global inequalities refers to, the differences between and the inequalities between different countries. And so that's not, within them, it can include the low SES and high SES. It's just that in terms of characterizing this particular observation of finding affordable food options, healthy and affordable food options. That doesn't quite describe that. Intersectionality is more in relation to the different like factors of oppressed groups that can influence that play a role in your interactions with others, but also your identity. And so that's not quite related to this. And urban decay, um that's more just like a decay of like those urban neighborhoods, but that also doesn't quite relate to this term. So that's why the answer is A. Does anyone have questions about this one? Not, I'm going to move on to the next one. We have about 50% saying A and 50% saying D. So their correct answer is D. So the question asks, which of the following is least likely to contribute to social reproduction? And the answer is D, because immigration is, kind of completely changing how a family structure would be, in a sense, because if like a member or the whole family is moving to another place, then they are, um, or leaving their homes, then that's completely changing their family structure. And social reproduction is more, so the term social reproduction is when like social inequalities are kind of, or inequalities are kind of passed down through generations. And this, for like high SES individuals, they they would keep maintaining their wealth as their generations go by. And for low SES individuals, it's the idea that, their economic status would also kind of be maintained throughout time. And so that's why for D, that's the incorrect answer. And for choices A, B, and C, cultural capital relating to, the aspects within your culture that you value. They could be material things, they could be just, values that are shared. That's cultural capital. Social capital in terms of like your network or social network of the families that we're thinking about for this. And then prestige, just like that, value placed on the individual, or like how much individuals kind of like know about this particular maybe family. So these other choices A, B, and C, they play a role into how, for example, like high SES individuals continue to maintain that high degree of wealth as their generations keep going by, because they have the social capital to provide, a social and cultural capital to provide their children with resources to do well, and, potentially get really good jobs and be able to maintain that high SES as well as the prestige, because they would know the family. And yes, prestige can be based on your education, job status, or title, just anything like others can see of an individual and kind of recognize um, recognize certain positives about it, or even negatives if it might be associated with um, the SES. But yeah, um, so that's why D is the correct answer. Does anyone have any questions about this?